We get a massive update from NHL insider Elliott Friedman revealing that a JT Miller trade is imminent as a team is actively pushing to acquire him and the Canucks are actively looking to trade him. We're going to break all this down in this episode, but Griffin, we just got to hop straight into this as last night we got shocking details from Elliott Friedman on just Hockey Night in Canada, going in and saying the Miller trade was close, but something happened and he will play. People asked if it was vetoed. No, I don't believe that's the issue. Some teams have permission to talk to him. Pettersson asks to stay. Now, it does go into him speaking out on it and saying, now, I don't know exactly what happened, but the trade is off right now. So there's nothing close that would prevent Miller from playing, but things have progressed to a certain point where it's definitely looking like he's going to play. And he does go into even more, saying JT Miller, I expect, was going to play tonight unless something changes at the last minute. But there was a time over the last 24 hours where Miller was not going to play. He was going to be held out of the lineup because talks were progressing on a trade, and I believe the team would be the New York Rangers. Now, just looking at this, Griffin, I know it's a lot. There's so much speculation that the Canucks were looking to move on from Miller, but this is the first time that Elliotte Friedman has spoke out on the matter to say, hey, listen, this team is actively looking to acquire him. This team has made trade offers on JT Miller, and it looks like a trade might happen even today or early next week. We've seen Rick Daly go into and say the Canucks are trying to move Miller, but Miller's agent wanted to say his client never asked for a request or demanded a trade. What's your initial thoughts on just all this coming out from Elliott Friedman, from Daly?
It's a lot to take in, and it's not just him, those two as well. Also, JT Miller, after they beat the Edmonton Oilers last night, he had a solid game, was speaking to the media, and they definitely brought up the questions of where he's going to be, or if he thinks he's going to be traded, or if he wants to be traded, or what if he played his last game of Vancouver. And he was very hush-hush and very annoyed with them, you could tell, because we've seen Miller act this way in interviews before, where you can't fault the guy because the media is asking questions that obviously a player isn't going to give him the answer that they want, especially when it's about that. He wants to stay in Vancouver as much as he's going to say it in the media. I don't know how true it is, but hopefully it is very true because Pettersson has to stay and he's been playing his ass off lately as to why he should stay and Miller should be the one to go. But Miller getting 2 assists last night. He had a really solid game. He's played a really solid season so far when he is on the ice. There's been a lot of mistakes during that stretch when he first came back, but lately he has started to find his game a little bit more. But it is coming at a time when, as a morale standpoint with the media and this whole circus that's been caused as a result of it, it does seem like that could be an indicator of him just trying to bump up his trade value for other teams as well, is one way that you could look at it. However, with the JT Miller situation, it's very conflicting. Like we said in our last video, of how he's one of my favorite Canucks. I'd hate to see him go, but if it is a chance where we do have to choose between Miller or Pettersson, with the way Pettersson's been playing, you can't just throw him off to the wayside or ship him out, especially when you just paid him last season. I know Miller is getting paid a decent amount as well, and he's one of our top scorers, especially last season, getting 100 points. But this is a situation where the Canucks have to look at and say, hey, if he's going to be producing on the ice, we can't have it hurt the locker room. But it seems like it is affecting the locker room or the bench at least a little bit. Tensions are getting a little high. So no matter what the production is on the ice, the tensions are still always going to be there. And that's something that the Canucks might want to move on from. As far as what they're going to get for him, that we're going to dive into in a second, it is looking a bit better than what the initial trade return would have been for him that we were covering a few days ago or last week. But again, I do see a trade being very imminent in the next week or so. I don't know if it's going to be entirely this week, but I think within the next week, probably before the Four Nations, we could see Miller moved. However, it is unfortunate, especially when we're looking at one of our 4 superstars that could be getting shipped out of Vancouver on a team that he wants to stay with. He's made a great home here with the Vancouver Canucks, been embraced by everybody. I know we haven't heard the JT Miller chants too much at Rogers Arena this season, but if all goes well, if it is a case where we have to ship him off, all the best to him. But if he does stay, hopefully he gets back to that.
And the biggest thing is, like we were saying, is when we're looking at these rumors, we've not had a big name like Elliott Friedman say that the trade was close. This was a trade that was in the works. This was a trade that almost prevented him from playing against the Oilers. We've seen him put up 2 assists in the game. Thank God the Canucks won this game as well. And we're going to touch on something that came from that game as well. But going into the Four Nations thing, we've seen Elliott Friedman come out and say that's going to be hard hockey. It's going to be great hockey. Those teams, those players, they're going to go at each other hard. If there's anyone on any of those rosters who might get dealt, I think their teams are going to consider trading them beforehand because you don't want to risk an injury. I don't have the quote here, but he does continue on talking about the Olympics when John Tavares broke his leg in 2014. The New York Islanders were without their captain for the rest of the season. This is something teams don't want to have happen. They don't want their star players, JT Miller being included on Team USA roster, going to play for his country, breaking his leg. The Canucks are not able to move him. Maybe this pushes it all the way into next season, depending on recovery. This is not what the Canucks want. We could see him moved, and I think if he's going to be moved, and with the reports, it seems like it's going to happen. It seems pretty imminent at this point. That is going to be before the Four Nations ends 2 weeks before trade deadline. The last thing you want is your trade assets to be hurt during this. Now, the biggest thing with the Rangers is going into their cap space. We've seen them clear up so much room moving on from Trouba. Right now, the current cap space is $10.8 million. Deadline cap space is $22.9 million. This gives the Canucks the leverage to trade JT Miller to this team and not have to eat contracts. We've seen the rumors of Zibanejad possibly coming to Vancouver. We've seen him come out and say, hey, I want to be in New York. I don't want to go there. We've seen the Canucks, and thank God, say we don't want a part of Zibanejad and how he's going downhill. But big reports came out that one of two players that were involved in this trade, and this trade still might happen depending on maybe the framework has to be changed a bit. But the two players linked to the Canucks are Lafreniere, former first overall pick in 2020. He's a big body at 6'2", 196 pounds. He's a left wing from Quebec, but we can see Laf really pick up his game. Last year, 57 points, 28 goals, 29 assists. He's becoming a prototypical power forward. We know Tocchet loves these players. This year in 45 games, 11 goals, 14 assists, 25 points. The New York Rangers are struggling as a whole. These numbers are dropping due to, yes, his production, but a lot to do with the team as well. But I think Laf would be a huge pickup for this Canucks team. The cap hits about $2.2 million this year, bumps up to just under $8 million until 2032, I think it is, the following season. Now, it wouldn't be a Canucks video if we didn't talk about Braden Schneider. That's also linked to the Canucks in this trade. We've talked about him quite a bit. Former 19th overall pick. He's a shutdown right-handed defenseman. A lot of Rangers fans, especially one of my friends that covers the Rangers as well, said this guy could be a number 2 defenseman with a good puck mover. The reason why he doesn't play the number 2 spot is because Adam Fox is ahead of him. This is the perfect player to put with Quinn Hughes, especially if you want to let him grow with this team both years at about $2.2 million. He's an RFA at the end of it. Looking at these guys, Griffin, would you be happy if the outcome was JT Miller for Schneider and a guy like Laf?
I think of all the trade possibilities we've talked about with whether it's the Sabres, whether it's the Rangers or some other teams, I think this is the package that would work the best for the Canucks and makes the most sense because you're not just giving up a forward in JT Miller, you're giving up one of your superstars. So he needs to be treated with that respect as far as teams trading for him instead of trying to lowball the Canucks like they would on maybe some other players that the Canucks would try and trade like Niels Höglander or Carson Soucy or Vinny Desharnais. However, getting a guy like Laf has a lot of upside. He's on a struggling Rangers team. So if he comes over to this Vancouver team where he fits into that Tocchet system well, they will be able to bring something out of him that New York just was not able to do, whether it was this season or through the entire course of his career. He's had some really solid stats in his seasons. But if Tocchet can just get him to that next level, or just the Canucks and this roster can help get him to that next level, I think that'll go a long way towards helping bolster down this offensive forward group that the Canucks are really struggling with. And then to do that, to make that deal even sweeter, you get a puck-moving defenseman or a shutdown defenseman where you can have this defensive core bolstered down because it has been nothing short of Swiss cheese this season, and it's been brutal to watch at many times where this is a team where we should have at least 4 to 5 solid defensemen that we can rely on any given night to get the job done. Right now, we have what? 2, 3, maybe? So with that, you do need to bring in a guy like Schneider where you can bolster down that and make sure that you can get those 4 to 5 reliable guys and make sure that you're not leaving your goalie hang out to dry and that you can get defensive points and get defensive momentum as well.
And I mean, looking at these guys, Canucks fans, what's your thoughts on the possibility of picking up a franchise right-handed defenseman, in my opinion, of a guy like Schneider? You can think of the future of having Schneider, Willander, and Hronek. This would be incredible. We talked about it a bit in the Nemec video as well. And what's your thoughts on possibly bringing in Laf as a winger that can come in, score 28 goals last year, and still play a hard-nosed, physical game, which would fit perfectly in this Tocchet system? Now, talking about defensemen as well, we're going to go into one little part here. Last night's game, we've seen Tyler Myers will have a hearing from his cross-check on Edmonton's Evan Bouchard. Date and time to be announced. So it does seem like Myers will be suspended. Connor McDavid will also have a hearing, so this does kind of even things out. But what's your guys' thoughts on everything we talked about this video? I know it's a furious stuff. What's your thoughts about Elliott Friedman just coming out and saying that a deal was close? What's your thoughts on Dolly coming out and saying that the Canucks are trying to move him? What's your thoughts on Petey saying, I want to stay? Let us know down in the comments. Right down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. I think we're only 10 subs off 6,000, so if you're enjoying this, go down and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.